Hello, everybody, and I would say welcome back to Path of Exile 2, but no. I wanted to do this is a criticism video. It's not going to be popular with people who really like the game, but I have as a long time casual gamer with lots of experience in various different kinds of games, I have some serious issues with the way that this game is and the way that things are going. Or at least the way that the vision that they had for this game. Now, I have listed disclaimer as the first thing in here, and that this is my opinion, and I'm allowed to have an opinion, and you're allowed to disagree with my opinion. But I would say that with over 30 years of gaming experience, I believe that it is a pretty informed opinion. 30 years of active gaming experience. I'm casual in that I don't like to play hardcore games, but other than that, I've played a lot of different games and I play all the time. I have a lot of experience in RPGs and action games, shooters, all different kinds of stuff. So when I say that this is an opinion, I believe it is a good informed opinion, but it is also just my opinion, so take it for what it's worth. I appreciate constructive conversational comments. If you're going to leave something, if any get good comments or anything that's just kind of negative and attacking in nature, you're going to get a little dot as a reply just to clear you off of my list of responses, because I don't have time for anybody's drama. I'm making this video because this game, as far as I can see, is just it's too geared towards the hardcore side of things and not geared enough towards the person who just wants to get on and play a game. And I feel like this game should be that, and it can be that, and it just needs some adjustments. So, that's my disclaimer. Whatever. First thing I want to talk about is this game has way too much action and not enough RPG in it. One of the reasons why we play RPGs is because we want to go into a fantasy world and experience a fantasy setting. And, a lot of us grew up with Dungeons and Dragons and stat-based role-playing games. And when you're playing a game like this that has a bunch of stats that you need to upgrade, it's super frustrating when those stats and those improvements that you get don't have enough of a meaningful difference to matter. And the reason why I say that is because the fights in this game are highly geared around you dodging around the map. So when you're running around and you're fighting something and you're doing some crazy stuff and they're getting ready to attack you, the expectation is that you're going to roll out of the way. You're going to run around and do all of this stuff. I love the WASD movement. I love being able to move and look at and shoot independently of where it is that I'm looking. It's a massive improvement over Path of Exile 1. But way too much of the fighting in this game is centered around you dodging, around you rolling out and rolling away from an attack, timing it perfectly to make sure that you don't get hit by whatever it is. And while that's cool in theory, the average person who doesn't do gaming all the time is really going to struggle with that. At least in Path of Exile 1, you could follow a build guide and get your character beefed up to the point where, you're going to take a bunch of hits because there is no dodge mechanic. And so as long as you're following a guide and you get some pretty decent gear, you can do a boss fight and have a really reasonable chance of succeeding in that boss fight because your character is built in a way that allows you to absorb those hits and survive through it. In this game, it doesn't seem to matter whether you have really good gear or not. I mean, I know I'm not super spec'd out or anything like that, but I got a pretty, I would say, respectable 37% fire resistance and lightning and all that stuff. And, the gear that I'm running around in, I could probably, if I had the currency, I would upgrade this to make it rare. But, I mean, I've got some pretty decent gear. It's not like slouchy stuff, but some of these bosses, that I'm having to fight, and they're not even act bosses. They're just run-of-the-mill, you're in an area and come across a boss fight. They're really, really taxing because the action part of this game, I feel like it was too heavily leaned on to try to make the game more, fun and exciting, and that was kind of what they were going for. So I think that there needs to be a very strong second look at the way that, at the fundamental way that combat works in this game. I'm fine with, dodge rolls being a part of the action sequence, but I feel like there needs to be we need to move more towards the RPG side of things, and for these dodge mechanics to not necessarily be required gameplay, it's something that you use to enhance your gameplay to make the boss fights easier. It shouldn't be mandatory that you're able to do this, because as you get older, or there's just a lot of people out there who just don't have the kind of reflexes and reaction time that's going to allow them to use this mechanic effectively. Especially when there's a million different things going on the screen. There's just too much going on for some of us to be able to pick out, oh, I need to dodge this when there's a massive flame on the screen, and then something else comes in and you're supposed to dodge it. They're just, the characters need to be, the fights need to be reworked in a way that allows gear and following a build guide to make it to where you can successfully navigate these challenges. So the action side of this really needs to kind of be winded back quite a bit, and we need to move back towards gear and build guides and stats and all of that stuff being the primary way that you're able to get through this stuff, because it's supposed to be an RPG, and RPGs are supposed to be centered around your stats and gear and all of that stuff, not how skillful you are with your ability to dodge attacks. If you want to play that kind of a game, then go play an action game that's like that. Now, for myself, I feel like currency just is not dropping nearly enough. And what I'm saying by that is I don't feel like the right kinds of currency are dropping nearly enough. For me to upgrade this weapon into a rare weapon, I need to have one of these. I think exalted orbs. Yeah, I think is an exalted orb. I don't remember exactly what they're called, but I don't get nearly enough of these that drop, and that sucks, because I would really love to, when I need to be able to upgrade this, I'm able to do that, but I can't, because I need to use these two, which, you know, I'm getting these in a pretty reasonable amount. But I'm not getting enough of these exalted orbs, and then whatever, I don't remember if it's exalted. This one adds a rare, it makes it rare and adds another modifier, and then this one here adds another rare modifier to it. I can't remember specifically what the names are, and that should tell you something, because I know that this is an orb of transmutation and this is an orb of augmentation, because I use these all the time, but I don't get nearly enough of the rare ones. And I understand rare means rare, but it shouldn't be that rare. And the problem is that if you don't want to have to play through the entire campaign and get to maps before starting another character, you have to share the very limited amount of these that you get. Now, I understand they don't want us just rolling in currency, but at the same time, you know, bad RNG should not punish me from being able to upgrade my gear to a point where I can overcome some of the challenges that they have put in for some of these bosses. So at the very least, maybe increasing the drop rate for these, because these two right here are really basic currencies. They allow you to get from nothing all the way up to a basic rare item, and access to these should really be a lot more common than I've found them to be. And I should be able to play multiple characters at the same level and not have to rely on a high level character to farm to have sufficient numbers to keep keep at least a couple pieces of my gear yellowed out, so that I can, get some decent things happening. These just don't drop nearly enough. What would be even better is if they provided you a way to purchase these via trading in whatever this, that, or the other thing. But yeah, we don't get enough. We just don't get enough of these to. It's the Regal Orb, Exalted Orb. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I think so. Regal Orb and then an Exalted Orb. Anyways, in my opinion, we just don't get nearly enough of these, so that we can at least have, you should be able to at least have two pieces of yellow gear on your character and on every character that you're playing. And I shouldn't be required to go all the way through the game with one character so that I can stock up enough orbs to keep my lower level characters able to do yellows. I just don't think that that's the way that should be. As far as resistances, I really like the approach that this game has taken to resistances. The ability to socket runes into your gear to give you the specific resistances that you want, I think, is an absolute win for the game. And, the further you get into the game, the more of these Artificer Orbs that you get. But as you can see, I'm getting some pretty bad RNG when it comes to the elemental runes, because those are the ones that you really want. I feel like the balance needs to be shifted to make the basic elemental resistance runes a lot more prevalent, and some of these more specialty ones a little bit more rare. So shift the balance so you're still getting the same number of runes, but the balance is more towards your basic elemental resistances and less towards these specialty things where you get some kind of random thing. I should maybe have one of each of these, and I should have like a stack of 10 of these 10 of each of these by now, so that whenever I swap out my gear, I can pop an artificer orb on it, shove 1 or 2 of the runes that I want into that piece of armor, and move on with my day. The fact that I have to sit here and wait for the RNG to be kind to me and give me another ice resistance orb, ice resistance rune, it's just it indicates to me that these things aren't dropping nearly enough. I do appreciate that rather than having you go through half the game and then instantly sinking 30% of your resistance, they have it to where you're losing 10% of your resistances with every act. That's what it seems to be happening, and that's a good thing. It allows you to slowly work your way rather than have all of a sudden now your resistances just tank all of a sudden. I think that's a good way to go, but there needs to be a little bit more mitigation in that by providing a lot more of these runes and preferably some more of these artificer orbs to make it so that we can socket our gear and manage our resistances a little bit better, because resistances will help soak up some of the damage that has made some of these boss fights that I'm going to be talking about here in a little bit so hard. So that's how I feel about that. When it comes to the Ascendency trials, the Ascendency trials just they take way too long. I haven't even done the second one. I'm just talking about the first tier of the Ascendency trials. Let me see if I can go back over to, and of course the graphics are going to take forever to load. Let me go back to the Trial of the Sekimas, and I'm not even going to really be able to put another one in there. Anyways, there's a if you've done it before, you'll know, but I don't really want to waste that. Do I have I think I have, yeah, I have a couple of spares. We can look at that. So we can put this in here. I'm not wasting that because we're not going to actually do the trial. I just want to look at this. Oh, come on. I forgot that you had to do that. Give me a second. All right, I had to get through that first little thing here so we could actually go look at the map. I'm not even going to finish this trial, so that was just a waste. I'm just trying to do this to go over the thing. So look at all this crap I have to go through. This is the first. This is the first of the Ascendency trials that you have to do. You have to go through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 rounds of crap before you can even get to the boss to fight it. Now, I know this is the PoE 1 in me talking, but I miss the days of being able to just kind of go through a couple of zones, fight the thing, get your Ascendancy, and then get back to the campaign. I haven't even gotten to the part where I haven't even done the second level of this stuff because this first level has turned me off so hard to the Ascendancy trials that I just don't even want to go. I don't want to see what the second one's going to be like, because this is ridiculous. This is ridiculous to get your first 2 Ascendancy points to go through all this. And then you fight the boss at the end, and the boss is, it can be fairly difficult depending on how much DPS you have. If you can't burn him down quickly, he starts doing all over the screen kinds of crazy BS crap, and that ends up destroying your honor. And then you see this honor down here. I'm going to complain about the honor. I'm sorry. I think this is a stupid mechanic. It's unreasonable because you should be, if you're able to just get through the Ascendancy trial, you should get your points. You shouldn't have to do it in a way where you minimize the amount of damage that you take. Surviving it should be enough. Surviving it should be enough. I don't like this honor mechanic, because what happens is that you might heal yourself, but healing yourself doesn't matter if you lose all of your honor. It's unreasonable. I don't like it. I think this is a very bad mechanic. It's a very bad way of making it happen, because it's super frustrating when you get to the end of a fight and then you die because your honor ran out, not because your hit points ran out. It's extremely frustrating. But my biggest issue is just the fact that the very first Ascendancy trial you go through is this. I haven't even seen what the second and third Ascendancy trials look like. I don't know if they have more steps, but realistically, this is just too much. For the first Ascendency trial, you should have to do maybe 1, 2, and 3, and then you fight a boss. Then for the second Ascendency trial, you do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you fight a boss. And then the third Ascendency trial, then you do 1, 2, and then you go all the way through all of this. That's the way it should be. I shouldn't have to commit, 20, 30 minutes of my time to go do an Ascendency trial, because I want to get back to the game. The actual quest and the campaign and all of that stuff, that's the stuff I'm trying to do. This is just extra crap that I have to do to get to unlock my Ascendency tree, and I don't want to. I don't want to go through all of this. I just don't want to do it. So that's my thoughts on the Ascendency. I feel like this whole thing here, it's cool in concept, and I appreciate that they were trying to do something to make it a little bit more interesting and more meaningful, but at the same time, there needs to be a balance. There needs to be a balance to the reward. The reward that you get needs to match the effort that you put into it. And in my opinion, this is just way too much effort to put into just the first 2 points that you're gonna get. It's ridiculous. Their initial way of incrementally making it, you start out, you do a little bit, you get a couple of points. Then the next trial you do, you have to do a little bit more, you get a couple more points. And then the last 2 trials, you do a little bit more and you get a couple more points. That's an incremental way that starts you off doing a little bit of stuff at first is the way to go. And I just, the direction that they took with this, I think they took it too far. They got a little carried away with their own imagination and got a little too invested with their idea here and went way too far with it. I think they need to pull this back. 3 for the first one, 5 for the second one, maybe all 8 for the third one, and then the last one, maybe make it some kind of crazy, ridiculous boss fight that you have to do. You don't even have to go through all of this. You just have some ridiculous, almost insurmountable boss that you have to fight to get your last thing. I think that's the way that should be. Now, for my absolute biggest complaint in the entire game. One of the things that was touted for this game when from a lot of the content creators when they were talking about this stuff was just the fact that the number of bosses in this game is frankly, I think, ridiculous. And I don't mean that in a good way. I mean that in a bad way. I mean that there's a the level of difficulty for a lot of just the run-of-the-mill bosses that you just happen to find as you're going through these maps is pretty unreasonable. I can list several off the top of my head that, as I've gone through the campaign, have caused me no end of trouble. I don't remember his name, but the warrior in the graveyard in Act 1, he can be pretty difficult depending on how lucky you get. His constant swinging at you, running at you, and swinging at you attack can really wear you down and wear down your potions. And if you're not playing a class that can stay away from him and shoot from afar, you're going to struggle with that fight. The Lachlan fight is extremely difficult if you get really unlucky with his my rage burns, his little 2-shot attack, because the problem is that sometimes that rage burns attacks instantly attacks. There's no wind up for it. And I'm finding that a lot of the bosses in this game have attacks that really should have very highly telegraphed wind-ups, and we were promised very highly telegraphed wind-ups for bosses when you were going to have an attack that might one-shot you. You're supposed to have this ridiculous wind-up that lets you know, hey, dummy, dodge this attack. But a lot of times the time that they wind up for that is just not nearly long enough, because, and especially when it's a one-shot attack and it's got a massive AoE, you need to have like 2 or 3 seconds sometimes to just move and then roll out of the way so that you don't get hit by that attack. So either wind-ups need to be much longer, or AoE for some of these big, massive one-shot attacks needs to be much smaller. There's a lot of changes that need to be made for some of these big bosses, but the biggest issue that I have is just that there's too many of those kinds of boss fights. I believe that end-of-act bosses should be epic challenges that you have to overcome. You know, the big bad boss at the end of each of the acts should be one of those fights where you actually have to sit and memorize tactics and learn how to fight the boss and make it something that you ingrain in yourself to be able to get through it. That's reasonable to me, because there's only going to be 6 of those, right? You could, an average gamer can sit and memorize 6 strategies to defeat 6 different bosses, and then when you have to go back through that campaign again, it's easier the next time because you already know how to fight them. But when you have 10 bosses in each act that each require you to learn how to kill them, that's too much information for most of us to remember. You need to be able to just kind of muscle your way through the incidental boss fights that are in the game. And, you know, most of the, I don't want to say most, I don't even want to say most. A fair number of the bosses in this game, you can just muscle your way through because the mechanics aren't so hard that you can't just react to them. But there are a bunch of bosses in this game that I just gave up on because they just weren't worth trying to figure out. I had to sit here and figure out this boss. There's a witch that you have to fight in this act here. This fight right here. This act right here is the fight I'm about to talk about right now is the fight that made me. I'm not playing this game anymore until I hear some kind of nerfing of the bosses in this game. She flies around on a broom and does a bunch of different stuff, and then she has this corridor of bone that shows up and flame comes at you, and if you get stuck in it, you're almost one shot. At least with this character I am. There's too many different bosses like that where the mechanics are so unforgiving that you have to try 15, 20, maybe 30 times sometimes just for the RNG to go in your favor, and finally you kill it. Nothing is more soul crushing than spending, 10 minutes fighting a boss that you've been fighting for, an hour already. With the retries that you're doing, you die in the last 10%, and then you have to start that fight all over again. I can't get on board with that. If you're gonna make us redo the fight all the way from the beginning, then the boss fights need to be much shorter, unless they're those end of act bosses. I can totally understand, Count What's-His-Face at the end of Act 1, the wizard guy at the end of Act 2, whatever the end of this act boss is, I can totally understand those fights needing to be long 10, 15-minute fights. That's fine. But there's way too many just you're running around the map and you come across a boss. And the boss, and you have to overcome all of these mechanics to figure it out. And it's just not reasonable. There's way, way too many. I have no problem with there being 100 bosses or whatever it is. But only 6 of those need to be super difficult bosses, and the rest of them just need to be flavor. They need to be a little bit more difficult than rares, maybe a marked different up from a rare, but they need to be mostly just, oh, this is some kind of cool pepper and seasoning that I'm putting on the game to fight this guy, a little bit of a break from just bashing on mobs. It requires a little bit more time and effort and focus to kill him, but it shouldn't be an epic fight. I don't need 100 epic fights. I need 6 epic fights, and then the rest of them are just me getting through the game. And I don't agree with the philosophy here. And that's what I'm talking about when we talk about challenge versus fun. There's too many people out there who think that a game has to be hard for it to be worth your time. For the vast majority of people who play games, we're just looking for something to do to occupy our time and entertain us while we have some downtime. While we have nothing else to do. I'm not looking. Life is stressful enough on its own. I don't need a video game coming along and trying to make me stressed out even more. I want to enjoy this world. I want to enjoy the storyline that is being presented. I want to enjoy the mechanics of running around and blowing up enemies, and maybe getting to maps at some point and enjoying the process of getting through maps and all of that stuff. But I've reached a point now where the challenge is way too high to the point that I just don't enjoy the game. I'm not having fun. This game is not fun to me anymore, because I don't want to have to beat my head up against every boss I come across. There should be certain gateways that you have to, overcome, and then the rest of it should just be enjoying the ambiance of the game. And I don't like that the direction of this game has been, we're going to focus on hard boss fights, and it's going to be a challenge, and it needs to be If you want to introduce challenge to the game, there needs to be difficulty settings, so that those of us who don't want to put up with that challenge can enjoy a version of the game that is just fun for us to play, and we can just enjoy it. And I have no reasonable person is going to have a problem with those of us choosing to take the easy route, get less reward out of it. And then hardcore players who want the challenge, who want to do things the hard way, they get something extra on top of the game for choosing the hardcore way of playing the game. And that caters to both sides of the crowd. I think that that's perfectly reasonable. There has to be a balance of, not all of us are trying to get a sense of accomplishment out of playing a video game. It's a video game. I'm not going to go to anybody in my life and say, I played Path of Exile 2, you should be impressed. No, And I don't give a crap about any of the other gamers on here as far as impressing them. Like, obviously my viewers, I care about you guys. I care about you guys coming on and enjoying watching me play video games. But if you've watched the last 2 streams that I've done, you're not enjoying that. You're not enjoying watching me any more than I'm enjoying getting my ass handed to me by these bosses that are way too hard for what they should be. And that's just how I feel about it. So I'm going to close out this rant session now by just saying that I feel like this game could be everything that all of these content creators are saying that it should be, but several things need to happen. First and foremost, the non-act ending bosses really need to be nerfed quite a bit. They need to be set up in a way to where you could beat it consistently beat it the first time around. It shouldn't be a cakewalk. Like, you shouldn't just be able to walk up and just bash on them for 3 minutes and they die. You should have to do some running around and dodging and all of that stuff. But it shouldn't require 3, 4, 5, 10 times of going after some of these in the middle of the act bosses to kill them. That's ridiculous. There needs to be some serious nerfs to that. Currency needs to be a lot more abundant, at least the basic currencies, and resistances need to be a lot easier to come by. They went down the path of resistances the right way, they just didn't go far enough. Resistance shouldn't be something that I have to find or figure out. It should be something I just be like, oh, let me socket these things in the way I want them to be. So yeah, and then fun. Fun is the most important thing. And if you're the percentage of people who find challenging things fun is much smaller than the percentage of people who are playing video games and find a video game fun if it's something they can just sink themselves into and just kind of enjoy. And that's just the way it is, because that's why everything works in a pyramid. The hardcore people are at the top, and there's very few of them, and the rest of everybody else is towards the bottom, and there's a lot more of us. And that's just the way that it is. And you got to make your game cater to that. You got to. So that's all I got to say. Hopefully some of that makes sense. I know there's going to be a million people who are... Well, I don't want to say. There's not going to be a million people who disagree. The vast majority of people are going to agree with everything that I say. It's going to be the vocal minority of people who have the hardcore mindset who are going to jump into my comments and say, you suck, get good, blah, blah, blah. The silent majority is always the ones that are actually the ones playing these games and making these things work. So if any developers come across this video somehow, I'm a very small content creator, I don't expect it to happen, but if they do, keep it in mind that the vast majority of people out there are not the hardcore crowd that's speaking in your ear all the time. It's people like me who just want to enjoy a game. Keep it in mind. So if you did get something out of this video, hit the like button, subscribe to help us reach 10,000 subscribers. Join as a member for early access to videos, among other perks, or you can just leave YouTube's version of a tip with the thanks button. Also a PayPal link in the description if you prefer to go that route. Hope that this game gets better. I will not be making any more content for this game, and I'm probably not even going to be playing this game anymore until I get some kind of word that some of these things are going to be addressed, because I don't enjoy bashing my head against a wall, and I'm not going to do it anymore. So thanks for watching. Come back for other videos. I play Elite Dangerous. I'll find something else to replace this game with for the future, and I'll see you then.